So last year, I quit my job and I spent 6 months trying to find Arctic apex predators in the wild. Probably be a lot easier just to go to the zoo and be like, there's one, but I wanted a mission. Oh, I needed a challenge. I'd done too much corporate shit for too long. I was like, let's go get into the wilderness. And the mission was a failure, unfortunately. What? Was it a failure? I don't know. I came face to face with polar bears in Canada. Almost got arrested at customs, but that's another story. Then I hired a boat in Norway, Churchill, in December to try and follow the herring migration, which tracks loads of killer whales. Found them, had a great time. Everywhere was so cold. Nipples are just like bing constantly. But the mission was a failure because I did not find the third piece of the puzzle. So yeah, back here to try and find the thing that I missed last year, which was the Arctic fox. Wish me luck! Dramatic. Welcome to my new series. I've got an itchy nose. Where's the Arctic fox? If you're new here, welcome. That makes two of us, as this is a whole new YouTube for me too. My name is Fab. I'm an adventure filmmaker and photographer, but I also do a bunch of product and branded stuff on the side with my pal Roman, who's behind the camera right now.
I can finally move my arms. Monday was so difficult. I wasn't even lifting heavy.
That stuff helps me fund my expeditions because polar bears just don't really pay well. Most of my nature-led content prior to this was all like short-form stuff. I did educational shit about otters and puffins, which, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed doing it and I still will continue doing it, but I don't know, as I get more and more sentimental, as I get crispier and older, I keep having more and more extreme adventures and meeting some really incredible people along the way. And there's just like this momentum that is building up in these trips, in these journeys, and I just think they deserve more time to give justice to the extreme amount of effort and sacrifice that goes behind each of these adventures. You know, on Instagram, be like, hey man, I'm in Canada. Do you know how I got there, bruv? It took that 5 days. It was long. So think of me as a wannabe David Attenborough from South London, like David Attenborough. So here we are on my YouTube, my new tube, my FabTube, FoxTube, Fox News Network, whatever. In the next 4 videos, I'll be sharing my tips on Arctic wildlife photography. That's why there's a camera over there. And where, when, and how to see these amazing animals within this series. But this is primarily the story of a complete Arctic failure. Last year, I went on a mission to find 3 Arctic apex predators. My apex predator targets were the polar bear, the killer whale, and the Arctic fox. And so I booked passage to Iceland, Canada, and Norway. Booked passage? Who says that? This ain't the Bible, innit? Old Testament Viking saga shit. Anyway, it was life-changing. But despite having some amazing experiences along the way, all I could think of after 6 months of battling these frigid Arctic regions was, for fuck's sake, where's the Arctic fox? Hence the name of this series. This 4-part tale covers the pure elation and utter infuriation of being at the whim of Mother Nature, especially when you're at the mercy of the extreme Arctic climate and weather. In this first episode, we're going to sling over to Canada and learn how to easily find the polar bear. My biggest win, easy, biggest thing and easy. The second episode, we're going to go over to Norway, which is that way, to follow the herring migration and hopefully the killer whales that come with it, which was almost a disaster. So hold on to your mittens, flick or click the subscribe thing. I don't know, I think I'm supposed to say that. And strap in. Strap in. Who straps in for a YouTube unless you're like watching this upside down? I remember my old job, someone called Caitlin, who always used to say, buckle up before a really boring presentation. No offense. It wasn't boring. Oh my God, she's gonna watch this. But I always thought that buckle up was one word. Buckle up. Like some sort of cowboy horse move or like a Mediterranean dessert filled with pistachios. Buckle up. Buckle up. Anyway, let's go. I mentioned I'll be sharing some tips on wildlife photography, so buckle up. Here's your first. It's a billion times easier to get shots of wildlife when you know where they're going to be, when they're going to be there, and what they're going to be doing there. Animals are like relatively simple. They need to eat, they need to not get eaten, they need to sleep, and they need to make babies. And that's it. That basically determines all other behaviors. I'm sweating. It's not just enough to like, you turn up to a particular environment and hope to see something. This ain't the zoo, bruv. Some people are lucky, that doesn't really work for me. I'm famously unlucky actually. It took me 10 times to visit Iceland before I saw the Northern Lights. So I always have to do a lot of planning. For example, allow me to digress. We're talking about bears. I'm just going to nip over to otters. In the UK, we have river otters, and they're really hard to see in rivers because they're often like fully nocturnal. There aren't really any parameters which dictate their movements. Maybe you'll be lucky, you'll see a little splish splash and you'll be like, there's one. Maybe you know the whereabouts of their den, but generally it's quite hard. But these river otters here also frequent sea lochs, particularly along the west coast of Scotland, where they are governed by the tides. So 2 hours before or after low tide is the best time, hands down, to see otters because they use the slack tide to get the fish amongst the kelp. So I always know when I'm there at that time, I look out for piles of otter shit, I look for fresh running water nearby, and you're almost guaranteed to see river otters. Job done. Okay, so now we know. That's an example. Now we jumped from otters to massive polar bears. Polar bear probably have an otter as the sandwich. Alas, polar bears live miles away. Famously, you can see them on the pack ice around Svalbard, which no one's ever heard of, or in other Arctic regions. But there are miles and miles of bleak and dangerous ground to cover by sea, air and land before you might be lucky enough to get to glimpse one. For me, that was too risky as I had limited budget and time, so I decided to go somewhere the bears have been going for generations, somewhere I was guaranteed to see one. Because what you need to understand about polar bears, is that they evolved from grizzly bears back in an ice age, back in the day. I don't remember dates. You ain't here for dates. These bears worked out that fat blubbery seals would chill out on the sea ice that connected to the land. And over thousands of years, this particular group of grizzly bears, their paws got bigger, their claws got smaller, just like crampons, and their fur changed, and they got hench. They're massive, much larger. Polar bears can get up to 10 feet tall, and they can weigh almost a ton. But this one flaw in this evolutionary spin was that they now rely on this pack ice to hunt. But of course the ice takes longer and longer to freeze every year due to the planet heating up. I'm sweating in this room. And this makes their summer fast last a lot longer. They now have to fast for 30 days longer than they had to in the 80s. And the bears are losing up to 1 kilo every day of fasting. These are some skinny little bears, you know what I'm saying? So back to my journey. I heard that in northern Canada, Hudson Bay was a really good place to see the bears in autumn, and at a place conveniently called Polar Bear Point. Who names it? There's a polar bear, let's name it after them. This place is good as the bears travel there in their hundreds every single year at the same time of year. Why? Because fresh water from the Churchill River joins the salt water of the Hudson Bay, like this, and so it starts to freeze here first. Salt water can remain in a liquid state below 0 degrees, so the fresh water helps balance it out, and the freezing process starts there. Bears know this, they go there, they're like, yo, it's time, the thing's gonna freeze. They haven't eaten all summer, they're hungry. But in the in autumn, they all go there, they're waiting for the sea ice so they can go ruin a seal's day somewhere. So last October, I arrived in Churchill. This is a small town near Polar Bear Point. It was me, small group of like enthusiasts, average age was about 102, just crisps, lovely people. But if the bear was coming at me, at least I know I could like outrun them. Be like, have this crispy jerky. The fun thing about Churchill is that they leave all the doors unlocked because hungry bears are known to frequently wander into town, and you might just need to get a quick getaway. If that was Peckham, there would be no cars left. Some bears don't get the message and they keep coming back. For those bears, they have a particular place where they put them, which is a polar bear prison. And the bears here are only given water and they're kept in isolation until the bay freezes over, at which point they're released and they make a beeline for the ice. They're not given any food because A, if they had food, it's not like their normal summer fast, they wouldn't be having food anyway. And B, if they're given food, they'll keep coming back to the prison. They'll be like, yo, this prison's sick, I'll get fish. You know what I'm saying? So they release them and it's all humane. It's called Polar Bear Prison, but it's a nice place. It's very cozy. I hear they have Netflix. We travelled away from town and into the tundra on these super elevated high electric tundra buggies, and they're basically conveniently just out of a bear's tallest reach, even if it's on its tippy toes. We also spent a couple of nights in the wilderness actually staying on one of these buggies. But the bears, they're used to these lumbering silent electric vehicles. Even though they're massive, they're just completely silent. And there was one bear that even pretended to be a mechanic. I saw loads of wildlife here, from red foxes, which are not Arctic foxes, ptarmigans, caribou, and of course, the bears. I was locked and loaded, that's a grim statement, with my go-to wildlife camera setup, which is this, the Canon R5C with the RF 100-500 lens. In my opinion, it's one of the best hybrid cameras out there. It's not really a fast lens by any means, but there was enough light in the Canadian Arctic at that time of year for me to feel confident I would be alright. But I had no idea how close we would get to these bears. The first time I saw a bear was when I was having dinner in the dining cart, fancy, and out of the window we saw these 3 massive ghosts just wander out of the darkness to have a look at what was on the menu. It was tofu. They were like, don't eat tofu, so they walked on. Goodbye. That's the first thing I learned. Bears don't like tofu. On the second day, after a grueling but very successful 8 days out in the tundra, one particular bear came to check us out. He was within about 10 feet. If he wanted to jump, see you later. But of course, I was elevated in the buggy and out of harm's way. But we locked eyes. His eyes were like jet black, like really powerful, but with a hint of sadness. And he had a little bit of a dribbly nose. I didn't know polar bears could get like a cold. And at that point, everything changed. I remember distinctly being like, that's it, I'm gonna quit my job. He was like, do it. I was like, bro, you're reading my mind. He was like, you keep getting in trouble with HR anyway, innit? I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. He was like, stop being late. I was like, what's this lecture? He was like, stop swearing at means and calling people slags. I was like, bruv, I'm gonna quit, it's fine. And I did, I quit my job. As soon as I got back, literally an hour after my welcome back lunch, I handed in my notice. It was like a revolving door. I went in and I went back out. But I think they've been expecting it. Polar bear must have sent them a message on LinkedIn. I couldn't help feeling sorry for these bears as they waited endlessly for the sea to freeze. Their population has halved since the 80s, and unless things change soon, who knows what's on their horizon. Maybe they'll evolve again into something with a more versatile diet. I don't know, tofu-eating polar bears. Maybe they'll move further north to where the sea ice is strongest, but forever being chased by global warming. I will be spending more time with polar bears in Svalbard later this year, hopefully. And I want to do my bit to raise, awareness for what they're going through. But for now, we move on. That was Apex Predator #1. That was one life-changing stare. That was one big decision. Next up, the orca, or killer whale. Killer whale sounds cooler, innit? And a boat trip. I thought that might be my last. Subscribe for episode 2, innit? Because things are about to get chapping. Bring the lip stuff.